did not refute the facts. So this is what we've gone through. Now I've taken 45 minutes to do this. I'm just touching the tip of the iceberg. There is so much stuff I haven't told you that is fantastic. But this is powerful enough to demonstrate, wow, this really did occur. Thank you very much. If you have any questions, you can come up and ask me. We're going to have a few minutes for questions now, but later I'm going to be around. You can come up, ask me any questions, and you can have my email. I'd be happy to give it to you. You can email me and ask me questions as well. You can have copies of any of this, any of the documents. I'm fine with any of that. So, questions?
How do we get copies of the document?
What's that? How do you get copies? If you give me your email, I'll just email it to you. I'll email you the whole PowerPoint. Of course, this is the short version. I did twice as long when I did the public library. By the way, you can find me on YouTube. You go on YouTube, type in my name, Perry, Sherman, and Easter, and you'll get twice as long with a lot other material in it. Thank you. Yes?
What led you down this pathway to do this research and to go down the path of sharing it with others?
What led me down this pathway? What's my story, sort of? My story is I grew up in an Episcopalian church. I had to go to church, but I really didn't believe it. I thought people die, they stay dead. Why do you think this guy rose from the dead? And the only thing people could tell me is that you have to have faith. And I thought that was ridiculous. So I became a hardcore skeptic. Come on, these guys are crazy, they're idiots. You know, they didn't believe this. So I was really a hardcore skeptic, and it was only when I was a junior in college studying polymer science that my friend kept telling me about it. And somehow, I was an open-minded skeptic. I would hear if there was some evidence. And there was a lawyer, dean of a law school with 8 earned degrees coming to town to explain the evidence. And I said, yeah, I'll go hear it. And then I went and heard it, and it was fantastic. It just blew me away. It's like, how come nobody ever told me? So I wanted to go and learn so I could tell other people so they wouldn't be in the same position I was. Thank you. Anybody else?
Do you ever address people like in their 30s and do they believe what you said?
Do I ever address people in their 30s and do they believe? Well, I gave a number of talks, 4 actually, at SUNY Albany, and a number of people did respond. There was definitely some back and forth, especially when I discussed the Bible and science. There's a lot of interest in that topic. So yes, actually, the best time to learn some things is in high school and junior high, it turns out, because you're formulating your beliefs and you really don't know about this stuff. I didn't know anything about it until I was in college. It's like the best kept secret. Nobody tells you that you're reading Plato and, hey, do you know there's only 10 copies and it's 1,000 years later? Nobody tells you that. And it's like, hey, you know the New Testament, there's 25,000 and it's like 30 years later? Nobody tells you that. Anyway, thank you for that question. Yes? I'm sorry, you got to speak up. Can't hear you.
Right. What is a Christian apologist and how do you get a degree?
What is a Christian apologist and how do you get a degree? Thank you very much. Well, the verse in 2 Timothy that says, be ready always to give an answer for the hope that is within you, that word is really apologia in the Greek. And what it means is somebody who is accused of a crime and they defend themselves, they muster a case and they say, here's why this is true. They would go in court. That's the apologia. So it really doesn't mean, I'm sorry, gee, I apologize. It means making a case for the truth of something. And how I got a degree in it, this guy was the dean of the law school that I heard. I said, man, I want to go learn everything I can. So I'm going to go out to California, move to California. I'm going to enroll in the law school, and I'm going to learn everything I possibly can about this. And there were other people that were there that were professors, and he brought people in from all over the world because he was really a prominent person that lots of prominent scholars knew, so I got to hear all this material, and I studied that, and I didn't want to, I thought at first I might want to be a lawyer, but I decided I didn't want to be a lawyer. I just wanted to know the truth, and I wanted to know what the law should be, not like this judge said, that judge said. I really wanted to know the truth. So that's how I got into that. Thank you very much. Yes?
Any evidence lost in the library at Alexandria prior?
I'm sorry, you got to speak up.
Was anything lost in the library at Alexandria prior?
Lost in the library of Alexandria?
Was anything lost?
Was anything lost? Oh yeah, there's a lot of documents lost in the Library of Alexandria. Many of these documents maybe we would have better evidence for other documents because of the fire in the Library of Alexandria, yes. But the ones that have survived, you see, the documents in the New Testament that have survived are many. There might have been many more, yes. Thank you for that question. Good question. Anybody else? Yes.
Early in the presentation, you
Mentioned, I'm sorry, you got to speak up. You want to
previous,
mention Josephus, yes.
one of the people who had presented some evidence
Right,
regarding Christ.
yes.
Can you just speak to that a little more?
Speak to that a little bit? Okay, well Josephus, as you can see, is not really as reliable as the eyewitnesses. I'm just using something that's outside the New Testament, and we have 1,000 years between his writing and the ones that are existing. But most people agree there's different copies that have different, a few different changes in them. But most people agree that he was reporting that Jesus was crucified, and the disciples did believe that he rose from the dead, and did believe that he was God. So these things I'm putting up there are mostly agreed about what he says. He doesn't have a lot about Jesus. What he's really writing about is the history of the Jews. So he writes a long history of the Jews, and this is just one little piece in there. Thank you. Good question. Anybody else? But it's interesting, the Talmud, the things that the Talmud says, that's pretty interesting. There's some other really fascinating things in the Talmud I'm not going into, but anyway, yes.
I always love the fact that Mary Magdalene was the first one to see Jesus alive.
Oh yeah, she says it was Mary Magdalene that was the first one to see Jesus alive, and she always loved that. That's a very interesting fact, because in the first century, women's testimony was not accepted. And so for the gospel writers to say she's the one that actually witnessed the tomb first is very unusual. You would never mention a woman. If you want to make a case and say, trying to make it look really good, you would never mention that a woman is the first one that saw it. But they're sticking to the truth. No, Mary Magdalene saw the empty tomb first and saw Jesus first. Thank you very much. Anybody else? Yes.
For people who are skeptics, when you present this, what are the, even after you present this, this is really make a great case, what is the most typical thing that you hear as something that they get stuck on? You know what I mean? Even when after you present, they're still skeptical and going, I don't know.
Thank you. Skeptics, what do they say when they hear the case? And what is the most typical thing that goes on? Well, I find that most skeptics haven't really looked into the case or heard the case. A number of skeptics that actually, like I mentioned Simon Greenleaf, they start looking into it. A lot of skeptics actually have become Christians, that they're really interested in looking into it. A lot of times, if I present the information to skeptics, it really gets down to, it ends up boiling down to, most of the time, it's a personal feeling. It's like, well, I still couldn't accept that because, and whatever reason, my son died, my mother got sick, or some other reason, not really having to do with the facts. That's usually other reasons. But that wasn't really my reason, and I want to reach people with the evidence that nobody presented to me. Other people, there were a few people here. Did they put their hands down? Did somebody else ask the question? No? Yes?
Are there copies of dictionaries that were used for the translations?
Are there copies of dictionaries that were used for the translation?
Yes.
Which translation? What are you talking about?
We're talking about ancient texts that were translated any number of times until we arrived at the English which you saw on the screen.
Okay, I often get the question about the translations, and really you have to understand, we have Hitler's Mein Kampf was translated from German into English. You have, Plato was written in Greek. It's translated into English because English-speaking people maybe don't read Greek, right? So if you're going to study in university, you want a translation, right? French works translated into English. So it's not really that the text has changed. People have tried to really faithfully render the words into English from, like, say, German Mein Kampf or from Plato, to English. So the translations really, if you really want to check it out and everything, you can learn Koine Greek. You can actually read it in the original language. You don't have to deal with the translations. And everything I'm showing, all these manuscripts, the 5,300, they're all Greek manuscripts. They're all exact copies of what was written in the language it was written, the Koine Greek. And when I was in college, I studied Koine Greek because I wanted to see what it said in the original language. And there's lots of tools today. You don't even have to rely on the translators who translate it. Teams of scholars try to translate it into English and do the best they can, and there's a number of different versions of translations. But if you want, you can learn Greek and read it in the original language. You can also look at the words on the computer and find out, Google these days, you know, what does that word really mean, the Greek word really mean? So you don't have to rely on that if you think that some things are really lost in the translation. But so really the answer is if you want to just read it without the translation, just go to the original language. Does that answer your question?
No.
What is your question? I mean, okay, I'm sorry, I'm not understanding.
Basically, there was not one translation from the original language to what you are showing on the screen. There was any number of translations.
You mean copies?
Translations.
Translations. You
Of
mean
what the original text meant.
what it meant? No, what I was showing is actually they're copying A, B, or alpha, beta, gamma.
You
You
were
know,
showing us quotations.
the quotations?
Your first two slides.
Oh yeah, I'm giving the quotations in English because nobody here reads Greek. What is that? What you mean? Or I'm trying to understand you. Explain it to me.
No, I think you do understand me that you don't need to go to ancient Greek to realize that there have been a number of interpretations of the ancient Greek to the quotations which you show on the screen.
Okay, interpretation now is what you're talking about.
What else can it be?
Okay, well, the